People can spend all day arguing over these things, correcting people. I don't know how useful that is.
No matter what you're bothered by or angry about right now, it's really easy to connect your misplaced anger with other people who will validate it.
The question is, why did that happen? Why was Blockbuster able to put those mom and pops out of business? And the answer is by providing a better service.
Before you think about it to the point where you're mad, you need to think, is this whole thing more complex than I'm giving it credit for?
My contention is, yes, strip away the resentment and anger, and perhaps life gets better for you and people around you. Perhaps. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day. We are here live on Discord because it is 6 p.m. Eastern. We are always here live on Discord. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and I realize that I've been living for 40 years incorrectly. And I don't know precisely what I've been doing wrong, but I have not been following Lieber's rules for life. I've been doing it wrong. I've been shooting from the hip for literally 4 decades. And tonight, I need to get on the right track. I need to be on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, that's right. Well, before we get to Lieber's rules for life, I want to mention that next week we have Technology Connections joining us, which is a really, really exciting episode. It's about a year in the making, finally getting Technology Connections on TCU. A huge fan of that channel. If you aren't familiar with that channel, well, holy cow, you're welcome. I just gave you a great new channel to check out. Always interesting content, always surprisingly interesting. It's like, I didn't know that I wanted to watch 24 minutes about can openers, but I'm glad that I did. I'm really glad that I did. I'm definitely going to mention the can opener episode when he joins us next week. But for this week, there's no guest. There's just rules. And
rules.
It's less of really it's less of rules, and it's more of observations, ways of viewing the world, things that in my nearly 4 decades on this planet, I have noticed and just want to put out there, see if anyone else has noticed, if anybody thinks that I'm wrong in these patterns that I've picked up, and just generally get your feedback directly as to what you think about these observations. But these are things that I think kind of help me understand things better, and perhaps could help you as well, I think.
And I want to be clear, too, that I don't know what this is going to be. Before we hit the record button, we're hanging out in the episode chat for a few minutes and making sure everything is working as it should. And I asked Kevin, hey, at this point, you can't tell me what we're going to talk about because it has to be completely and totally fresh. But we talk about this stuff all the time because we either kind of put 2 and 2 together with things that we see and do, and that you've done for a long time, long enough that you can distill it down into one concept. Usually you know what it is, and it's good or what's bad, but it's really tough to summarize and communicate in any kind of concise way. So that's a driver of it. Another driver is we just plain see people blowing it all the time. All the time, they're engaging in some kind of behavior that is severely destructive to them and others. And then we'll talk about hey, there's a problem right here, but what exactly is that problem? Why is it a problem? Because it's really important to be able to reduce that stuff into a useful, actionable line of thought. So that's what we're going to start with. And as I said, I don't quite know where Kevin's going with this one.
Yeah, well, it's serendipitous that you kind of mentioned destructive behavior, because this is something that I do think is not only is it destructive to the people who do it, but the people who are engaged with them too. It's just kind of like this ball of dumb that starts rolling down a hill. It's like a ball of dumbs, the snowball that just grows and grows and grows. And there's no stopping the momentum. I don't think that you can even interfere with it. I think the best thing you could do is just sort of recognize it and get out of the way so it doesn't roll over you. So sort of like in Indiana Jones style, running away from the big boulder, just jump to the side of it. The best way I could distill this pattern that I wrote down here is that people are often very angry about things that they're completely wrong about to begin with. Now, I see this all the time. And like I said, I don't think that there's like, you could spend, and people do, people can spend all day sort of arguing over these things, correcting people, doing that like actually sort of guy, trying to correct people. I don't know how useful that is because it's so prevalent. And for the most part, I think the people who are angry about the thing that they're wrong about really just want to be angry. I don't think that they so much even are interested in learning the reality of this situation. And sometimes the reality is just too complex to even start discussing. So I know that this is all really vague. So that I want to give a specific example. Because whenever you try to discuss something conceptual, it gets really, really hard without any sort of specifics or example. So this is something that I actually was talking about in the Discord, I think last week, where I came across a thread on Twitter that had tons of interactions, tons of likes, where someone was really upset about the purported damage that Blockbuster Video did to mom and pop video stores.
Oh, okay. I didn't see this one. What was their argument for that?
Well, there wasn't much of an argument. It was essentially like they were mad that I think that there's this kind of nostalgia going around now for Blockbuster Video, since it was like a thing that occurred, when a lot of people on the internet now were kids, and then it went out of business. So I think that by the way, it occurred
on TV for me. I saw commercials for Blockbuster Video, and I couldn't tell you where the nearest one was.
We will get into that. That's part of what I wanted to discuss, actually. Okay. Yeah. That's part of my explanation here. So this person went on like a whole rant about how, people are ignoring the fact that Blockbuster was this like evil thing that murdered mom and pop video stores.
Okay.
And part of what I initially thought of is exactly what you just brought up. It's like, okay, well, first of all, while it was a very popular chain, there were plenty of areas of the country that it did not infiltrate, including where we grew up, which continued to have multiple video games or video rental stores throughout our childhood. And I have no idea what the closest Blockbuster Video was to us. I'm
looking it up here. I'm looking it up. I think it would probably have to be Utica. There are a bunch of maps online to find Blockbuster locations, but I don't know if there's a list. But yeah, there were several small video stores that had movies and video games. I mean, I remember Videodio was one.
Box Office Video.
Yeah, there were as many video stores as gas stations.
Yeah.
There was no shortage of this at all, and they were not affected in the slightest by Blockbuster Video or any chain.
No, they weren't. But other places were. So, I'm sure that there were plenty of places that were put out of business because of Blockbuster Video, which was what this person was upset about. What I immediately thought of, which was, they're all out of business. That whole industry is out of business. that is such a weird thing to be mad about in 2022, since the window in which Blockbuster Video put like mom and pop video stores out of business, how short of a window could that have possibly been? 5 years?
Right.
10 years?
Yeah.
Maybe a decade.
Yeah. I think 5 is probably good there. But imagine putting this in other terms where you're like, okay, large steel conglomerates and iron fabricators and things like that, they really put the blacksmiths out of business. And nobody needs a blacksmith now.
Right.
None of this matters. Like occasionally you need something welded, because in that instance too, that's the evolution of that kind of work. Things change to the point where there's an entirely new thing that was needed. But yeah, it would be crazy to be pissed off about that. Did that happen? It absolutely happened. It happened in my family. My great-grandfather had a blacksmith shop in Cooperstown, where the current county office building is, where Great American was, the second Great American, across from Doubleday Field. Look, at a certain point, his business was on the irrelevant side. And I'm sure the cheap manufacturing of metal goods and the reliability of those goods led to that decline. But without those advances, how much longer do you think he had? 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. What a dumb thing to be mad about. And I don't know why somebody would do that now with Blockbuster, where it's obvious how it changed.
It's been
that it
so
went into
long
streaming.
too. That was a long time ago. That videos. It wasn't like 3 years ago, and we're still trying to figure out like how that market changed. It was like 15 years ago or something, and that entire industry was wiped out by a better product, which was Netflix, which was at first like DVDs by mail, and Redbox, which was getting DVDs at like the supermarket or whatever out of a vending machine. Like DVD vending machines and mail service put out the entire industry of going to a brick and mortar video rental place, regardless of whether it was owned by a chain or it was owned by like the local do-gooders that want to have a video store. Like it doesn't make any sense to be mad about Blockbuster putting out mom and pop shops when they all went out. The whole thing went out of business by
the industry.
By the industry. By a disruptive market that came in.
That's right.
Which was Netflix first and Redbox. And now it's just streaming. You don't even have to get things through the mail, and most people don't. They just stream. So then it got replaced again. So we're like 2 degrees of market disruption away from driving to a video store and hoping that they have a copy of Home Alone 2 for you to rent, which was a terrible way to do this.
Was there ever a movie, Kevin, that you wanted to get and it was out and you had to wait?
All the time.
Can you remember a specific movie, though, that you had to wait for people to return it?
No, but I'm sure, whatever the most popular, Jurassic Park, like whatever the most popular back in the day, like 1993 banger movie was. That was a terrible system, because all the time you would go to the video store, and if somebody else was watching it, it's like, well, I guess I cannot watch that. Like, that system sucks. There's a reason it went out of business. It's gone.
I'm just imagining 10-year-old Kevin all disappointed that he has to wait 7 weeks for like the 3 VHS pack of Schindler's List to come back to the rental store.
Yeah. No, more like Mr. Nanny with Hulk Hogan. But yeah, I'm like, this is such a weird thing to be like very upset, not like upset enough to be posting about it and getting other people involved and like talking about it. It's like, this is so unnecessary.
Angry. I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description. Why do you think they're doing it? That's the question that I've got. Is there a lot of legitimate things to be angry about that are perfectly real, perfectly true? You can be angry about all sorts of political things. You can be angry at the war in Ukraine. I suppose you could be angry on either side of that. There's just this unlimited list of very real problems that are current, they're urgent, that could set you off. Why would you choose something that's 20 years old, happened kind of naturally with the whole industry getting wiped out, and wasn't even really true? Wasn't even, their argument doesn't exist. Why would somebody do that when there are so many outrages, legitimate outrages, being opened up like a buffet for you to take from?
Well, I think that part of it is just finding a thing that people haven't been mad about yet, perhaps. So it gives them a feeling of, I don't know,
like freshness in
that. Like I'm the pioneer of, let's talk about how this is, a problem. And there's currency and value in that. I mean, there was validation with this idiotic anger because it was getting a lot of feedback, was getting a lot of likes and retweets and stuff like that. So the person was, I guess, right in their assessment of like, here's a thing to be angry about. And a lot of other people were like, yeah, that is messed up. Like, oh, okay.
We've talked about this in roundabout ways with some guests too in recent weeks, but no matter what you're bothered by or angry about right now, it's really easy for on whatever platform, let's just use Twitter because that's easy. It's really easy to connect your shitty, misplaced anger with other people who will validate it. Whereas if you went to any grouping, social gathering, where it's like a cross section of regular people, and you start railing off on this issue, nobody's going to want to talk to you. Nobody cares about it. Maybe one person entertains you. But then you do the same thing on Twitter and you're algorithmically connected to 17,000 people who will back up your weird thoughts and encourage them and validate them and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a weird and totally unnatural side effect of social media, is that no matter almost what you say, there can be people who will agree with you and validate you and make you feel good for it.
That's a very new thing. You had to work hard socially to go connect with people who believed in the weirdness that you believe in. And sometimes when I say weirdness, I mean like deviance from the mean. Sometimes that can just be a hyper-focused thing. Like, I don't know, let's say you collect vintage clothespins. Well, you would have had to have like an insane correspondence network through the mail to connect yourself with like-minded clothespin collectors across the country. Now you just go on eBay, right? So that's weird in the sense that very few people do it, but it's not a crazy thing. if you did believe in something or liked something really fringe, like I'm trying to think of a conspiracy theory that would be absolutely beyond the pale, like what is it? Is it David Icke? Is that his name? Who believes in like the lizard people running the world?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, like that isn't just not too many people being into it. You're like, no. This is really fringe stuff. It was hard. You pretty much had to stew in your own mind about all of these things in the past. And now, you've got an audience. You've got an audience right there. And even if you don't have it, the platform makes it for you. The whole idea is to connect information on one side with information or receptors to that information elsewhere. Mm-hmm. This is the whole idea on every platform. That means however many tens of thousands of people are going to be raging at Blockbuster Video. And, in that specific industry too, there are a couple things that are really hard to do on a small scale that get much, much, much easier as you scale up. Think of a car dealership. How much capital do you need to have a car dealership? Like selling new cars and things like that. They tend not to get people started by doing things on credit and commission and sending you, 90 cars so that you can sell 3 in a month. It's something that happens at scale. And with video type stuff, you're way better off having a huge, huge scaled operation as opposed to like, if your mom and pop, I don't know, was that Mr. Nanny or Mr. Mom? What was the Hulk Hogan movie?
Mr. Nanny, but Mr. Mom is a good movie too. I think that was Michael Keaton.
These are two different movies that I'm.
Yeah, one is Hulk Hogan, one is Michael Keaton. Both good though, and good in.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Nanny is terrible. All Hulk Hogan movies are horrible.
So you open up the distribution catalog, you see Mr. Nanny on there. Let's say it's $20 for a copy. As a mom and pop, you have to really think, am I going to rent this out enough times at $2.99 to make it worth my while to buy Mr. Nanny? If you're Blockbuster Video and you have thousands and thousands of customers coming in and out, you can drop, $50 on 3 copies of Mr. Nanny and know that there are enough people in there, enough Kevin Liebers in the world to at least make your money back on purchasing those copies. So it's just plain something that worked at it did not work very well at a small scale and worked fantastically at a large scale, which is why the only thing that killed Blockbuster was the industry changing, not Blockbuster screwing it up. Had the industry not gone through like foundational evolutions into what eventually became streaming and on demand, there's probably just as strong a Blockbuster presence now and probably not much of a competitor. Somebody mentioned Redbox in the episode chat and like, that's an evolution as well. Maybe there would be a competitor in that sense. But the whole thing, like everything in the example that you brought up, completely crumbles when you even scratch the surface of it. The whole tweet beginning to end, the whole outrage beginning to end is stupid. Well, you've got what thousands of people raging.
What you're suggesting is not even a point that I was going to bring up, but it is a really important point. It's like, okay, well, let's drill down to the mom and pop stores that were replaced by Blockbuster, which did happen.
Okay.
The question is, why did that happen? Why was Blockbuster able to put those mom and pops out of business? And the answer is by providing a better service, which more people chose over the mom and pop in the free marketplace because of some of the reasons that you just listed, where maybe the mom and pop has like 4 copies of Jurassic Park, so you can never get one, and so you can never rent the movie. So you go to Blockbuster because they have an entire wall of Jurassic Parks, and you can watch the movie that you want to watch and spend $4 on a Friday night to entertain your kids while you have a date night or whatever it is. It's a better product. put the worst product out of business. So even on those grounds, what are you talking about?
Can I throw out a hot take / cancelable opinion?
Oh, yes.
Can I just rage? I didn't even think about this until a moment ago. Do you know how much I hate small businesses?
No.
Like, so there are a couple problems here, and I get slammed. I mean, slammed with all of this stuff like shop small, whatever. I am so happy to do it when the product is better, where there's a unique offering. There's a store in the town that I live in. It's called Spurbacks, that sells the best cheese that I have had anywhere in the world. It is the best cheddar cheese I've had and the best cheese period I've ever had. And I am a massive consumer of cheese. I actually look up cheese prices before I go to a country. I look up two things. One is I look up the price of beer, because you go to pintprice.org, and the price of beer is so closely tied to the general consumer prices. It's so indicative of how much life costs in a country that it's important to look to beer prices to see how much a trip to a country is going to cost you. Well, you can look up cheese too, pound of cheese or a kilo of cheese. I'm happy to get cheese there because I can't get it anywhere else. It's awesome. And they've done a great job having that product and having a few other things that are really unique. Generally, though, why would I pay 30% more to get something that's a hassle when I can just get it on Amazon and pick it up off my porch? Why would I do that? And if people are telling me that I have to support the community and shop small, let's say I wanted to support the community. Why don't I cut the bullshit out, buy the thing from Amazon, and then just give somebody the 30% I would have spent? Then they don't have to bother stocking it and selling it to me. Why do we have to go through the charade of business to give them the money? Here's $20. Let me buy the thing off Amazon and leave me alone. Congratulations, you got your money. I've shopped small and I've gone big in a way that's easy. So generally, they offer worse value and a much greater pain in the ass factor than the larger businesses. So yeah, I don't shop small. Small businesses are the micro penises of the economy.
All right. Now that is a statement. I'll say real quickly that I do understand like the general vibe of a thing like a Blockbuster sucks. Like I get that. Like the homogenization of this experience is lame, whereas, you know, some quirky local place is really unique and warm, and it's its own thing, and maybe it's a reflective of the local culture, whereas this chain comes in and it's very sterilized and bland and corporate. I get that.
Yeah.
Me too. I totally get that.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, people don't care about that as much as they care about a better product. I was reading about this as it relates to the airline industry recently.
Oh, okay.
There was this really interesting thing about how there's like no room on flights. Like all of the seats are all cramped together, and like a lot of airlines got rid of amenities, you know, whether it's you know, peanuts and pretzels and a free soda or whatever. Like a lot of that stuff is gone. And people are upset about that.
Now.
People, they're like, this
it's
sucks.
It's like a Greyhound bus in the sky.
Yeah, this sucks. Like we're all packed in here like a can of sardines. We don't even get, you know, pretzels and a can of Coke anymore. This sucks. And what the thread went on to explain was, you're right, it does suck. But guess what happened? Mm-hmm. There were airlines like JetBlue and Southwest that decided to come into the market and disrupt it and say, hey, we're going to cut out all like the amenities and we're going to cram everybody into these tubes in the sky. And as a result, our ticket prices are going to be a lot cheaper. It's going to be much cheaper to fly on our airline We don't have to pay for this extra stuff, and we can fit more people in the plane. So
that's right. They basically admitted we can deliver the same bad experience for half the price. Well, why wouldn't you do it?
Well, no. They said we will give you a bad experience. We will make flying suck, but it will cost less. That's what
I mean.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah.
So what happened was the other airlines have had to pivot to make all of their flights suck more and cost less, because my point is at the end of the day, people were not willing to pay more money to have like more foot room and a can of Coke halfway through the flight. People would rather save the $70 or whatever it was to have a crappier experience. So at the end of the day, if you complain like, hey, this sucks, the answer is yeah. But it turns out that's what people want. That's what they decided. They decided they want suck because it's cheaper, and they'd rather pay less for suck than pay more for less suck. So what do you do?
Yeah, and if there's an environment that people do value, then that's amazing. That's that small business providing the service in a different way, providing value that others really can't. That's awesome. I mean, when you have a store that can do that, that's great. And so like you could go to a Home Depot and buy paint. You could go to a small hardware store that understands that different things like fit in your design process and like make suggestions based on that. You'd be a little more boutique. And that's the game to me, is you don't do the things that the big business does. You don't try to compete at all. You offer a different service, and maybe that's more hand-holding. Maybe that's a nicer environment. It doesn't have to be lower prices. People aren't wholly rational on that kind of thing. They like going to a place that knows them, for example, and greets them by name. They'd rather get their coffee there than a drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts, perhaps. Well, that's fine. But, there's one more thing I want to throw in, because it's like the rare time that I'm comfortable saying something political, because it's on both sides. With the small business stuff, since we're 1 week away from midterms here, both sides claim that small businesses are the backbone of the economy. This is absolutely and totally false. New businesses are the backbone of the economy. There's a great report from the St. Louis Federal Reserve that came out like a decade ago that was totally ignored. And it basically said, yeah, the driver economically is new stuff. Sometimes that's small businesses. Sometimes it's like a giant factory opening. But hiring new people is great. The innovation is great. It's not this worship of the small business thing. I hate it. It's the worst. I can't take it. And I feel like it's baked into the problem that your Twitter person had, where I bet they don't get outraged about that if there isn't this weird religious connection to the sanctity of the small business.
Well, yeah. How many people does that mom and pop video store employ? How many people? 5? Yeah. How many people? I bet almost 5 people work every shift at a Blockbuster.
Probably.
So
yeah, same with Best Buy. I mean, electronics are really hard to do on a small scale. Places like Best Buy, I don't know, it is kind of a warehouse environment, and that's not personal and it's not great, but like, I don't value any of that. I want my thing at the best price. And if there's a problem with it, I want to not have a hassle taking it back. I don't need somebody to call me by my name when I walk in, and I don't need to be able to call somebody at home with a problem or greet them like, hey, Chip, I need a vacuum cleaner.
Right.
This is not useful to me. What's useful to me is getting on with my life and having a vacuum cleaner on my porch to unbox at my convenience.
The one industry in which this has played out really well, the boutique side, is the restaurant industry. Well, really like food service in general. Ooh. So you mentioned like coffee shops, like there's still plenty of like local coffee shops, even though like chain coffee shops still are very popular, like Starbucks, obviously. But restaurants pull this off better than anyone, because
absolutely with
with the exception of like a handful of chain restaurants, I almost would never prefer a chain restaurant over a local restaurant. Almost never, unless like the local restaurant is like really shady looking and I trust that the chain restaurant won't give me food poisoning. Like maybe that's the only instance. There's very few instances in which this works the other way. Almost always, I'd much rather have the local restaurant food than, Applebee's or something like that.
Craft beers too, and small batch beers and microbreweries and even like small tier, but still nationwide breweries. That's a thing that wasn't there in the 90s. People wanted an alternative to, Miller Lite and Bud Light and all this, instead of the 5 or 6 standard beers. Now, anywhere you go, it has like literally hundreds. At a grocery store, there might be 100 or 200 options that you can choose from. And people like that. That's really a great thing. So yeah, it definitely fits. Small is cool when it's unique. And they do that because they're not making the next Budweiser so much as they're making like triple chocolate coffee, colon ale. I don't know, but it's something that nobody else is making.
You had me until the colon part. It sounded good up until that. That kind of threw me
it's healthier.
A wrench.
Nobody else is making the colon booze. That's your unique sales proposition with that.
That's right. Half Metamucil, half beer.
That's right.
Get you buzzed and clean you out. But
we want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys. So how do you not think like this? That's my question is, how do you not be this Blockbuster Twitter person?
Oh, that's a really good question. How do you not think like that? Geez, that might have to be its own episode because that might actually have to be another like Lieber rule that I haven't outlined yet. But I think that it basically comes down to don't assume that you understand something complex. That's probably, but it probably is not that, but it seems something like that because in order for us to even explain like why the Blockbuster thing is stupid, we did kind of have to go down like a few different roads on it. And I'm not sure whether or not because we wanted to give a bunch of different reasons it was stupid, or if you have to give all those reasons to give a complete picture as to why it's stupid. But, because I don't know how I would even in a tweet like respond to that being dumb, other than saying like that industry was wiped out anyway. So like, why are you even mad about this?
I don't know if you have the episode chat up, but Jen just said if you find yourself saying, why don't they just, then you probably don't understand the problem or situation. And that makes me think of also seeing it on Twitter. Somebody had a tweet that was like, it's something about gun violence where it's like, if you ban the guns, nobody will have them and there won't be gun violence. I'm like, well, obviously criminals have them because that's what makes them criminals. They simply skirt your rules. They've made a choice to not respect the law that you've made, and that's obvious that will happen to some degree everywhere in the world. But that's that, why don't they just do this simple action as if you're the first one who's ever thought about it? Nobody else considered this before you sat down and whipped out your iPhone. Yeah, and Jen follows this up by saying, if your solution involves if everybody just, you don't have a solution, you have a daydream, because nobody ever just does anything. And that is, that harkens back to what you were saying with people enjoying cheaper prices, better values for them, stuff like that. You could say, well, why doesn't everybody just go to their local grocer, their farmers markets, whatever, and get their food that way? Well, a lot of people don't want to, and they have really good reasons for not wanting to. They want things that will last longer. They want things that fit within their schedule of cooking. Like fresh vegetables are hard for me to buy because I can't go through them at a fast enough pace sometimes. So I like really good frozen vegetables. Some are better than others. But that's an example of why I could not pick up frozen broccoli at a farmer's market. I can't shop there because it's more complex than that. There's more happening. And I think, I feel like that's baked into your rule here, is that before you say anything or think about it to the point where you're mad, you need to think, is this whole thing more complex than I'm giving it credit for? How many times?
The answer is yes.
Stopping and thinking
always.
that.
The answer is
pretty much always
yes. No. It is always yes. I can't think of a thing that you would have some sort of miraculous solution to after thinking about it for 1 second and have that be the depth of its complexity. That doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
It's always more complex than you assume.
I think you could safely say that 99% of the time you could stop yourself from making this mistake just by recognizing, just by acknowledging that whatever the thing is more complex than either you realize at the time or than anybody knows or can know. We were talking about this with crime stats earlier, where you have to realize that compiled crime statistics are not a measure of crime because they don't include unreported crime. Those unreported crimes, they happened in real life. They count as crimes, but there's actually no way to count them. Like, how do you count something that by definition you don't know about? So something as simple as like burglaries per 100,000 residents annually. That appears to be a really solid stat that doesn't have a whole lot of room for interpretation, but it may be the underreporting of a problem. And that's just like the simplest one. The example you brought up with Blockbuster here, it depends on technology advancing. It depends on all sorts of economic factors. It's way more complex. It's insanely complex. And then you work in human behavior, which is real tough to narrow down.
Especially when people don't know what they want, which is what I was trying to illustrate with my plane example, is that I guarantee you, if you ask 100 people, would they rather have more room and, a free snack or something, they'd say yes. But then when they actually go to purchase the ticket, they don't. So what they really want is the action that they take, not what they say or what they think that they want. So that is complex in and of itself, is that people don't always know what they want and often don't even recognize it consciously. And they'll make the opposite decision all the time, even though in their brain they think that they want the other thing. So I think an easier thing to say is that, and maybe this is exhausting, so maybe this is a terrible way to live, so perhaps it's easier not to be this way, but it's to be skeptical of pretty much everything.
God, everything.
Like, just be skeptical of everything. And especially when people are mad about a thing. It's like if someone is like really upset about a thing, I am instantly skeptical if they even know what they're talking about. Like, do they even understand what they're mad about? Like,
I bet they don't.
I bet they don't. It doesn't seem.
Do you think
like
they
it.
just want to be mad? Do you think that's the need they're fulfilling, is to be mad, and that mentally they're confusing? This is a big thing. A big problem here is that people confuse being angry about something with doing something. They are not. Being angry about something is not doing something. But I think that indignation and pissed offedness is in their minds actual action. They think it's meaningful. And it feels like they'll grab onto these issues, not bother to stop and think about complexity. and gin up their own anger to feel like they're doing something. Well, they might be now that they can connect with hundreds of thousands of other people in 5 minutes algorithmically. They are having an impact on other people's thoughts. That's not great. That's probably a real bad thing.
Well, and who knows psychologically what's going on, if they're just upset about other things, so they're trying to project it onto external things to be mad about, and then, putting that out into the world. And, I'm actually really mad about this, but what I'm actually mad about is that I hate my dad or whatever. Like, who knows what's actually going on? There was a great thing that I saw. Somebody was talking about how, just playing the numbers, like a certain percentage of people online are having the worst day of their life every day. Like every single day, there is a certain percentage of people who are having the worst day of their entire life, or maybe, the worst day up until that point of their life, whether they're 15 years old or 55.
Yeah.
So
true.
Like, who in the world knows what? I mean, I had that. I thought I had told this story in the podcast probably a long time ago. I had that not funny, but it was like really a sad interaction with somebody where.
Is this the grocery store?
No. This was online where I was just posting a new video or something, and somebody replied with a really nasty remark at me.
Oh,
and
yes, I remember.
And
this.
I was like, whoa, and I replied to them. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, what are you upset about?
Yeah.
And they ended up being like, I'm so sorry, I had to put my dog down today.
Right. They were just extremely upset for unrelated reasons and just snapped.
Yeah. Like literally their dog died and they were having the worst day of their life. I posted something about like a new Vsauce 2 video, and out came their, depression and sadness out on me. That was like, F you and your stupid whatever. It's like, okay.
And then remarkably, they admitted that. They didn't just disappear. I mean, who does that and then comes back to explain their emotional context? That's amazing that they did it. It's awesome.
It is amazing. And it goes to show, sort of going back to what you were saying earlier, even about unreported crime, it's like, I'm sure 99% of like unreported anger at the worst day of their life is happening all the time. Because how many people will admit that? How many people will be like, like I just buried my dog, so I'm kind of having a rough go of it today, and I took that out on you. I'm sorry. Like that's not going to happen more than one out of a million.
There are all sorts of not the worst day of your life, but let's say if it's in like the top 25 worst days, that still beats out a lot of days. That's a really high rank for a shitty day. And maybe your wife serving you with divorce papers is the 7th worst day of your life. That's pretty bad. And a lot of people are having really, really bad days, if not that percentage who they're having demonstrably the worst day of their life, which I've never thought about. I've never thought about it. Like, of all the people I follow on Twitter, I bet on any given day, one person is having a top 10 worst day of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see that. Whereas before, somebody retreats to their apartment and, cries and yells and freaks out and watches TV and does whatever they do to get through it. But now they can do something.
Yeah. Back in my day, you just kind of punched holes in the wall like a normal person. And now these days you got these people screaming at other people on Twitter.
So what Kevin's saying is that you can secure your mental and emotional stability by just punching the wall. You've got to be careful, though, that you don't punch into a stud. Assuming your fist is like, let's say like 3 inches across and the studs are spaced 16 inches, you've got like a 15+% chance of just at the least winging a stud and go into the ER when you've broken your hand.
Can you imagine somebody waving a stud finder along the wall to find like the open space to punch, like having the wherewithal to hold their anger while they find the stud with the stud finder? Yeah, no, don't punch walls. That was what you would call a joke, an exaggeration for humorous effect and nothing more.
But on TV, they always go between the studs. I want to see a take where it's like a blooper where somebody just punches straight into a stud. Oh. They have to be removed from the set.
Yeah. Boss Thread says in the chat a DeWalt safety video about punching walls. So you've decided to punch a wall. That'd be a good skit, actually.
Wouldn't that be a good skit to do like the instructional guide on how to safely punch a wall
when your wife has left you with the kids?
Oh God, this is such a funny concept.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. All right, so I'm going to bring it back to the top with a kind of another way to say this rule, and I know it's getting kind of more confusing, but just because somebody is mad about something just doesn't mean that they're right about what they're mad about. And a lot of times you'll notice that they're mad about something that they don't even understand to begin with. So it's like, well, this is just kind of sad, honestly.
Mm-hmm. There are two really useful elements to this. And one is being that person and stopping to think about it being more complex and why you're getting outraged by it. There's that. But the things that you've been bringing up about seeing other people do this, I think because that's going to be way more common than you going off to that degree yourself. You see it all the time. Like, how many times a day do we see somebody doing this on a place like Twitter? And I think that's the other side of this coin, where it's like you constantly have to remind yourself that the things that other people are mad about are more complex, and that they might have a really bad day or something that's different than just automatically validating their anger and the truth driving it. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. The motivations behind it, like who knows? It is all very masked behind sort of like layers.
Yeah,
that you can't really see
a lot
through.
Of layers to this onion.
There is, but that's why I don't really engage in it. I think it's just kind of like you notice it. It's like a little bit sort of like a car crash. You know, you just kind of like let the EMTs do their job and get out of their way. Just move along. I don't know, but
no, it's a big one, and it's not on the decline. Is that fair to say that all the stuff we're talking about seems to be on the rise?
Well, yeah. I mean, because of the reasons that you said earlier, that it's often rewarded. It's often rewarded to be mad about a thing, even if you're wrong about it. So it makes sense that there's an incentive to just be outraged by stupid things you don't even get to begin with. So it will continue to happen as long as that mechanism is still in place. Will definitely continue to happen. But I think that it's useful at least to recognize that, just because somebody is really upset about something doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Because you would think that they would. I guess that is why this is like a weird thing to me. It's like you would think like if I am so invested in a thing that I've gotten to the point of being mad about it, you would think that
it's almost proof of it, isn't it?
You would think that like, wow, I know so much about this that it's like it upsets me. And I almost wonder if there's like a paradox there where it's like the less you understand something, the more likely you are to just have this base emotional reaction. I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
I wonder if there's a name for that phenomenon, because it's almost like a Dunning-Kruger kind of thing. But there's got to be a name for that. But that's a very real phenomenon where, you think about people who are they're dealing with and trying to influence or solve really big problems. They're not screaming and yelling all the time. I mean, think about world leaders, for example. Like they're occasionally dealing with something that is super, super heavy and potentially millions of lives at stake with it. I'm not saying that they make clear-headed, perfect decisions. They don't. But they're probably not screaming and throwing the things on their desk and just going on outrage. They have enough details to process whatever the problem is, right? And I can see them freaking out and losing it on staff if they weren't provided with the details. So like by definition here, the less you know, the more frustrated it is. And it feels like that's, that's at play a lot, where frustration comes from not knowing enough. It's really frustrating not to know enough. So I get it. I'm not criticizing that. Like, when you know a lot about a thing, it's a whole lot easier to process a problem, even when it's a serious problem. If you're in the dark mentally on a thing, it's maddening. It's maddening, and it's really easy to spiral out of control with it.
Well, and also to get frustrated by other people not doing the very simple thing that you think will fix the problem, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, why aren't other people doing this very simple thing that in my mind I know will fix this problem? And the answer is maybe because it's more complicated than that, and your simple idea on how to fix it will not work or will make things worse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The unintended consequences of whatever you're going bananas over may be far, far worse than whatever problem you're dealing with. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Like there was a really interesting quote recently from Bono. I don't know if you saw this, but Bono is like an incredible, just an incrediable philanthropist and activist, and like very, very free, has always been.
Yeah.
He does so many things to fundraise and be involved in helping people. He has forever.
Yeah.
And after, I don't know how many decades of being deeply involved in this stuff, he came out very recently and had some quote about how he essentially kind of thought that, why don't we just give, I'm going to butcher the quote, I don't have it in front of me, but the sentiment was like, if people are hungry, why don't we just give them food? Or if they're poor, like, why don't we give them more money? And he was like,
okay.
He's like, I thought that made sense to me for a really long time, and now I realize that doesn't work. It's like that is like a very simplistic solution, like theoretical solution to a problem that's a lot more complicated than that. What you really need to do is like
recognize that.
Yeah, what you really need to do is like empower economies and like entrepreneurship and develop skills like locally, and like there's way more that you need to do structurally and locally, rather than just like bussing in truckloads of food to hungry people. It's like, okay, at some point that food runs out. You can't do that forever. And these people are going to not have the skills to build out an economy and help themselves and help each other and all of that stuff. Like, it's not just throwing a Band-Aid on a thing. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And recognizing too that people tend to have a much better sense of what's going to solve their problems than other people have, for them.
Oh,
so
that's right.
There's this famous example of the Gates Foundation giving mosquito nets to a bunch of people in a malaria-heavy place, and they used those mosquito nets as fishing nets because that met a need for them that was greater than avoiding the malaria. So, like, you have people deciding that we need to do this thing without actually considering the input of the people who need the thing done. And Jen again is posting very, very good videos into the episode chat that are relevant to all of this. There's really no end to it, but that's the kind of thing, like these topics, this is the next level of thought that people need to have, that they need to understand that things are a bit more complex. And well, if it's that complex, what are the possible options for solving it? It sounds like Bono has a better understanding of how to do that now than he did 20 years ago when South Park makes fun of him for being the biggest piece of shit in the world. If you remember that episode,
no, I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Stan's dad eats all of this PF Chang's and all this like kimchi and stuff to take the biggest dump in the world, and he beats Bono's record, and they kind of go back and forth on this, but in the end, it's revealed that Bono himself is actually, as a person, the world record's dump. So, But that's what a lot of people thought of him back then. Well, now I don't think it's crazy for somebody to say it's a little more complex than I thought it was. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it took him like 30 years of doing this to figure that out, but better late than never. It's like, okay, we need to actually like build and maintain roads and have like refrigerated trucking to transport food that has to stay refrigerated over long distances. There's like a million things that have to happen in order to have like a steady and affordable supply of food to places.
Everything is harder than you think.
It's so hard.
That is, yeah. And it's there's like a quip that I heard a very long time ago that I think of constantly, where if you ask somebody about like what's going to bring about something like the end to the war in Ukraine, they will have ideas for that. They will say, well, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And then with that same person, if you're like, yeah, on Sunday mornings at like 7, my neighbor mows his lawn and it wakes me up and like, this pisses me off. How do I deal with that? And they'll be like, oh, that's really complex. Like that's a delicate situation. Like you don't want to alienate your neighbor because you gotta live by him, and like you don't have the power to just make him do whatever. They totally recognize the complexity in that scenario. But if it's peace in the Middle East, they've got like a solution that is obvious to them and fits on a bumper sticker. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, why don't they do that? Why don't they just do that and it'll fix it? It's like, okay, yeah. Consider that it's more complicated. Maybe it's more complicated than your neighbor's lawnmower situation.
Yeah, right.
Maybe consider that. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like
that we went into this. I like that we took this thing that honestly it's really important. That kind of anger drives a whole lot of people's behavior. It drives a lot of their projects, whether it's creative or advocacy, or
it drives their identities.
It drives their identity. Yep. Yep. You nailed it. That's it, isn't it? Their sense of meaning in the world and their purpose and their identities. It's a big deal because that trickles down to literally everything you do.
Yeah. So I could see people not wanting to learn more about the complexity of it because it would strip away the thing that's getting them out of the bed in the morning. I mean,
who are you without the indignation? That's a hard question for some people to answer. If you take away the things they complain about or the things that upset them, with some people, you don't have a lot left after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would suggest perhaps they would be happier. They would be like, I don't know, maybe not.
So would the people around them.
I think that's my contention. My contention is, yes, strip away the resentment and anger, and perhaps life gets better for you and people around you. Perhaps.
Yes, it does.
I would suggest almost definitely it does.
Almost definitely, yes.
Almost definitely
Absolutely.
It does. And maybe a good place to start is just recognizing that it's probably more complicated than you're giving it credit.
Yeah.
And certainly,
and that's okay.
What other people are giving
credit. It's
credit.
okay for you to not understand. Yeah, it's okay that you don't know every little detail. Like you're not at fault as a human. You're not failing if you don't have a full grasp or full knowledge of a situation. That is totally okay. And the reality is that you almost never do. Even with people you love, whether it's a parent or a boyfriend or just anybody, the people who you think you know best, you still don't know 100% of what's going on in their head. You always don't know. And that's okay. But I think people have a really hard time accepting that. And if that's the case when it comes to your mom or your dad or your sister or your boyfriend or whatever, well, it's definitely the case with the entire economy of the 1990s, or how long it takes for technological evolutions to impact, the corner video store or some geopolitical issue. It's totally okay to not be fully sure on anything. Like that's the default condition here in humanity is a portion of knowledge and never all the knowledge.
Yeah. Well, and I learned that speaking with like scientists over the years, scientists and different researchers over the years on Vsauce too, is that there's like no more unsure people on the planet than people who will study one thing for their entire life. Like I've studied this like molecule for 30 years. Oh, what can you tell me about it? Nothing definitively. It's like, oh my God.
No.
You could spend like literally dedicate your life to one hyper-focused, be the expert on planet Earth in the history of humanity on something. And there's not like a whole lot you can say definitively about that. It's like, that is humbling beyond words.
Those people usually realize that their entire body of work is just the beginning of understanding the topic. Those people who have the exhaustive world-class expertise on a thing are usually like, yeah, I dedicated my life to what is essentially in this sphere a really good start at approaching the topic.
Right. A drop in the
occasionally
bucket.
there's something, occasionally there's something historical that is definitively in the past and over. Like you see this in collecting, where you can pretty much know everything there is to know about something that was produced in 1937 and then never again. You may uncover new information, but it's not going to be anything significant. But like that thing is over, and you're probably not just getting started, but that kind of thing is such a niche. Anything about the actual world, anything about understanding how it works. You mentioned the hard sciences. Oh my God, is it even worse in the social sciences? Because nothing there is definitive. It's at least in the sciences, you can categorize things and say that, this is X because it's not Y or Z. And you can start to narrow things down a little bit. So if those people are telling you, I'm just getting started on a thing and I don't really know enough to draw conclusions, then the people who are working in the murky, muddy sewage fields of the social sciences are much worse off than them.
I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Leach fields. That's the phrase I'm trying to think of. The leach field. Is that the thing that like bubbles up in people's lawns when their septic tank is full?
Yeah, I think so. Man, we spent the whole episode on that one rule, and I have so many more. Yeah. So I guess we have to do this again. We didn't even get to your rule. So this is
rule next.
Yeah. Well, the next one will be a Tabor rule, and I think that I'd like to sort of differentiate the rules a little bit in the sense that my rules are mostly about seeing the world, and Matt, your rules are more about acting in the world. There are things that people, I think, can do to make their lives better. So
yes,
while I like to, I guess, fart around in the conceptual, we'll get much more practical with Tabor rules, because what you tend to talk about are honestly things that, I will do this and I could do this and this is better than doing that. It's less like, have you noticed this pattern?
Yeah, but those two things are so tightly interrelated, where you have the understanding the world and then you have the navigating the world side. And you really, truly cannot do one without the other. Not well. I mean, you can definitely do one without the other. You're just going to, wind up in probably a very bad place. But one informs the other. Always, always, always. You understand a thing, and because you see it this way, that informs your action on it. You choose a certain action in the world because it fits with your understanding of a thing. They are absolutely perfectly balanced on the scales of existence. So, they're not the same sorts of conversations, but they're equally important.
Okay. Yeah. So just to recap, the rule of the day is just because somebody is angry about something doesn't mean that they even understand it. Just because someone is mad doesn't mean they're right. I think that we have, like, as human beings, we have this like crying baby syndrome where we want to, like, the baby is upset. There must be a reason for that. Well, not always, because the reason could be a total illusion on their part. They could be completely angry about a thing that is a fabrication of their own imagination. So keep that in mind when you notice rants and raves and anger and we need to talk about sort of statements. It's like, I don't think we do. I don't.
You need to think about. That's what the reply should be. We don't have to talk at all. You just have to just sit in a closet, turn off every device you've got. Turn the light off too. You should be in a dark closet. Just sit on the floor until you've thought about this for 60 minutes.
Yeah. Or 4 seconds. That'd be a good place to start. Think about what you just said for 4 seconds and then come back to me. Do we have any patron questions? Oh, Chinchilla asked, now that Halloween is over, what do we do? Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but already Mariah Carey is dominating with her Christmas song. So I think that it's Christmas already. I think we've just skipped over Thanksgiving, November in general. Now Christmas is 2 months.
But this is an important measurement for most of my neighbors because today is the first day where the Christmas decorations that they've left out all year long are relevant again. So they get to not feel bad about the Christmas lights that have been there through the entire spring and summer.
This is the broken clock decorating method. The broken clock is right, in this case, once a year. All right, we're out of here. Next week, Technology Connections. You do not want to miss that. That'll be a great chat. Until then, we'll see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefisanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Chelxies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.